Welcome to everybody by Luca Alteri. This lecture deals with the subject of environmental impacts of tourism and especially of mass tourism. I'm going to share my presentation. That's it. Well, mass tourism is also called over tourism when it reaches the stage in which a site or a tourist destination produce, produces an excessive number of temporary visitors. As argued Butler in an article in 2018, actually overtourism is not the same as overcrowding or busy destination. It represents a situation where numbers of visitors overload the facilities available and also become a serious inconvenience for permanent residents of such locations. Obviously, we all agree in identifying some symbolic images of the excess of tourism in our society. Let's take the image of Fontana di Trevi in Rome, of tourism in Venice, and crowd in Barcelona. But in my opinion, it is two other images that really underline the global size and the severe scope of the problem. The first is the one of a place where the over touristic tagline doesn't need a million or even 1,000 cases to come true. If we look up and take a glance at the top of Mount Everest, we note that even 10 people, only 10 people can be a serious crowd. And yet today we have all seen photographs like this one with a conga line of 100 or more climbers edging their way towards the highest point on Earth. However, it is not necessary to go all the way to the Himalayas in order to figure how big this problem has become. Because we can pull our smartphone out and hit the Flight Radar 24, uh, this up button. There, they are every airliner in the world that is in the air at the moment. Swap those little yellow aircraft images for ants, for insects, little insects, and we would be living in one seriously overcrowded ant's nest. It's easy to see that the sheer numbers of passengers crammed into all of those aircrafts have to bring some sort of problems with them. Under a socio-political point of view, our tourism generally means that the tourism needs are satisfied, but everyday residence requirements are sidelined. For example, hotel projects for tourist override apartment construction for the local population, or Airbnb reserves those apartments for high-paying short-term visitors, and local ager escalates since new families cannot find housing with affordable rent. It is easy to see over-tourism problems focused on popular cities and fashionable resorts, but from the Galapagos Islands to the rainforest of Costa Rica, it is increasingly evident that the problem can find its way into the natural world as well, unfortunately. The late capitalistic tourism clashes with the balance of natural environments, especially in the case of pristine temples. This means that over-tourism is not limited to European cities, but also concerns destination sites that belong to the so-called Global South. The evidence that this situation does not yet have sufficient literature is not due to the fact that the phenomenon does not exist or is not important, but that sufficient empirical research is still lacking. As an important exception, Matthias Picot and Carla Ricaute Quijano illustrated the case of Galapagos Islands, namely an idealized natural and social environment, a sort of modern myth for a very heterogeneous mosaic of people. Its biological wonders and iconic animals, mostly endemic, living only on that archipelago, have long been documented in scientific and travel literature. UNESCO has chosen the islands as the site implementation of the World Heritage Convention, for example. Perpetuating Darwin's legacy, in contemporary times, Galapagos developed as an open laboratory for both natural sciences and political ecology discourses. Logically, the tourism industry has capitalized on these enchanted islands so that postcard images of the archipelago continuously feed the imaginations of travelers, tourists, researchers, international volunteers, and investors from all over the world. Usually, none of them has had a previous and a direct knowledge of the present state of the Galapagos environment, indeed. However, we should not think that the local administration of the Galapagos Islands has underestimated the risk of mass tourism. Pioneering models for calculating the current capacity of the visit sites in the Galapagos were set up since the early 1980s and were implemented through the 1990s. Cruise tourism has been designed as a fair compromise between conservationism and the local tourism industry. Sailing at night would allow the visitors to explore the most isolated islands of the archipelago during the daytime. The mandatory presence of certified tour guides would ensure a strong component of environmental education and useful income for local economy. Nevertheless, from 2007 to 2010, UNESCO placed the Galapagos Islands on the list of World Heritage Sites in danger. This became a diplomatic concern for Ecuadorian government, which decided to adopt a new ecotourism model. Let's cite some statistics. The Charles Darwin Foundation pointed out that the commercial flights to the islands increased by 193% between 2001 and 2006, reaching an average of 30 flights per week in 2006. As a matter of fact, those flights and four, even six cargo ships each week from the Ecuadorian mainland to the Galapagos created an invisible bridge, a land bridge between the islands and the rest of the planet. Moreover, the number of registered tourism businesses located in the Galapagos has grown exponentially. From 2003 to 2017, restaurant numbers grew from 2 to 160, hotels from 61 to 312, and land-based tour operators from 0 to 177, according to the Observatorio de Turismo de Galápagos. Another problem emphasized by the number of commercial flights was constituted by the risk of the entry of invasive alien species to the Galapagos because of the lax controls for aircrafts and disinfection protocols. To sum up, the dominant capitalistic firms of doing business as usual has imposed its vision over Galapagos economy and ecotourism, even whether formulated as an alternative business model and not only as a cultural attitude, appears no longer to be the norm over there. Galapagos Islands silently turned from tourism for conservation, where tourism helped economically to preserve the environment and also served to educate visitors to respect nature, to conservation for tourism and leisure, in the sense of a natural Disneyland for rich and bird tourists unaware of the balance between mankind and the environment. Why did this happen and how? As a first point, at the beginning of the third millennium, the Ecuadorian government started to follow a US-driven political economy address towards four words composing the national touristic landscape, along with the Andes, the Amazon, and the continental Pacific coast. Galapagos Islands have become pivotal for the national economy. This led the Ecuadorian government to mobilize the Galapagos imagery as a part of multi-million dollar international branding and promotion campaigns, even by the help of a video clip during the 2015 US Super Bowl. Galapagos have turned to become a mainstream window of what Ecuador had and still has to offer to international visitors within packages such as flight included 3 to 4 nights accommodation and breakfast. Visitors were left to decide whether to arrange visits from land-based tour operators or even to explore nearby sites on their own. According to registered tour operators, free-range tourists were prone to buy low-quality services and tours with uncertified guides and experience little environmental interpretation. Within the archipelago, the nature was effectively commodified, and the wilderness conservation model adopted in the late 1960s was totally disrupted. The World Heritage status itself was transformed into a matter of image, into an empty brand. Definitely, this emerging low-cost form of tourism has been planned and promoted as a beach holiday or a space for family time and relaxation rather than an ecotourism experience, which is the solution. Just reducing the number of tourists and land-based agencies trying to resume the status of the archipelago as a wild and pristine environment. And what about those inner migrants who came to Galapagos in order to work in the tourism sector? Would they lose their job? The discussion over the need to manage the risks and impacts of tourism cannot forget the advantage and opportunities connected to this sector in and around the islands. The so-called zero growth tourism model is harsh to promote and could be suffered by the local community as a top-down decision. Indeed, the two variables are somehow lost in the discourse of tourism saturation in natural environments, local community participation in tourism development, and access of national tourism to the islands. In 1979, when Galapagos National Park first collected data on visitation, Ecuadorian accounted for only 18% of 11,000 tourists that year. By 2017, domestic tourism represented 31% of the almost 242,000 tourists of the island. This means that the initiatory experience of traveling through the Galapagos archipelago, reserved for privileged tourists and the Western scientific community, has come to an end. The contemporary democratization of travel and access to tourism experiences in wilderness areas has stopped the socio-economic exclusion of local population. So, which is the solution? Analyzing Matthias Pecot and Carla Ricaute Quijano's contribution, we can sum up two prompts. The place of residence in conservation and local perception of tourism needs to be fully acknowledged, and every Eurocentric model of touristic empowerment of natural sites located in the global south must be avoided. Thanks for your attention.